Beardy and the Beast Media Club.
Ba-da-ba, ba-da-ba. This is a placeholder intro song.
Thank you for joining us for Beardy and the Beast Media Club, a full spoiler discussion into a piece of media. We will willingly distribute the pages of those spoilers to the populace. As always, if you enjoy what we do, please share us with your clique or join the gossip in the comments or at our Discord. A full list of services that we're available on can be found at beardyandthebeast.com. My name is Drew, and always my co-host is named Devon, and I know he gets mad when I call him Devon, almost as mad as I get when I think about how he's named Devon.
I didn't know what you were going to go with. That's not what I expected. Boo, you whore.
Today we'll be discussing 2004's high school comedy, Mean Girls. So Devon, was this piece so fetch, or is it not going to happen?
Oh, I think the movie's pretty fetch.
Devon, shut up. I love it.
What? I didn't say anything.
I aside from like the Chizu and Ghibli stuff, I haven't had such a positive reaction to like anything else we've watched that I hadn't already seen before. I really enjoyed this movie, like far more than I anticipated I would.
Yay! I got one that you're not like, yeah. You know, there's a lot of firsts with this film. Like, this was Tina Fey's first writing. I think it was her writing debut for film. And considering it's like, she apparently like said, "Yep, I'll do it," not realizing it was a nonfiction book. That's more of a guideline. So there's no story or anything. I think this was like Amanda Seyfried's first film as well. And I mean, like Tina Fey's a comic genius. She was probably always one of my favorite parts of Saturday Night Live, you know, when it was actually bearable to watch. And I think she nailed it with the film.
The only negative, I'm going to start out with the negative here, just because it's easier to get out of the way. I pretty much mildly liked to extremely liked almost everything about the film, except for the writing and the structure of Mrs. George, Amy Poehler's character. It doesn't have anything to do with Amy. It was just that character seemed far more closer to what you would expect out of like a Goes to White Castle.
Yes.
Gag, opposed to the level of comedy that they were kind of doing with Mean Girls.
Yeah, I would agree with that. I mean, it doesn't even really show where like Regina's character is kind of coming from. And I guess the other part with that's very tied to that, I don't think they needed to have a little bit with I'm assuming is Regina's younger sister. That just kind of went a little bit. It's kind of like, I don't know the point here.
I mean, the first time, like, it was establishing a family dynamic.
Yeah.
After that, it seemed extra and not effective, just not a great choice.
Yeah.
But for me, like, Mrs. George, her wanting attention and stuff, sure. But, like, the whole boob job, they're as hard as rocks, dog, like, biting and she not even noticing.
Yeah.
Like, that's not how that works, but also... It wasn't a shock gag to go like, and it wasn't something that made me chuckle. It just seemed like a pure miss.
Yeah. I mean, I wonder if some of that comes from just types of things that would have come from Saturday Night Live. And again, like the film is obviously filled with alums.
Yeah.
I mean, Lorne Michaels produced it still. One thing I wonder is like, I did not realize this makes perfect sense. Apparently, like they had to like cut a bunch of jokes and stuff and change a bunch of jokes because they would have gotten a rating, R rating.
Yeah, I could see that.
So it makes me wonder if there was a way that that fit better, but that's obviously complete speculation, and I can't see anything obvious to make that fit better anyway. So I agree with you.
You find in a lot of like these alum or click-styled comedy movies that they lose track of their story partway through,
Mhm.
and
Yes.
I don't think this one did this. It was a bit looser in the end,
Mm.
but it still kept a solid enough line and then kind of summed it up in the end that made it feel cohesive.
I think part of that comes from, again, you don't have a plot that you're basing it off of. So you've got themes.
Hmm.
From what I understand of the book it's based off of is it's just how did teenage girls navigate through high school and the different cliques and the type of bullying that can happen with girls presents differently than it does with guys.
Yeah.
And so what that did, unlike some Little Hours that we've seen, uh, is she stuck to the theme.
Hmm.
I don't think, like, watching the film, like, literally there's only one character that of the teenage girls that I can say is like, yeah, you're the only one that's not a complete ass, and that is Seyfried's Karen. Like, she's just kind of there. Everyone else, like, you get these things like, no, you're not so bad. Nope, you're doing some terrible things. Like, even like the first introduction of Regina, she didn't come across too bad, despite what Caddy was being told about her.
Hmm.
Until they do the whole three-way calling thing, and she just wouldn't know how to deal with that anyway.
Well, that's the
Uh,
thing, showing that everybody, no matter the clique, has these faults and are terrible, but they're uh, painting one specific group as being the largest offenders of it.
mhm.
Like that whole final scene where it's like everybody put up your hands made me really think it's like the bowling with girls is like to destroy people.
Yeah.
It's like bullying with guys is like you call them, an F slur and then punch them and then it's over.
It's over. Who knows? You might become best friends the next day.
Yeah.
I really liked how they used Katie around this. I mean, we take the fish out of water completely, right?
Hmm.
Homeschooled. I mean, the culture shock that she's dealing with right from the get go. It works, and so she's just doesn't understand that world, and watching her get pulled into it and not even realizing she had. Janice calling her out. It's like, yeah, at least we know we're mean. There's a lot of depth there. It's just like, yeah, no, you made some mistakes. And you didn't even realize it 'cause you got pulled into that world.
Well, yeah, it's one of those things like seeing her descent from naivety to a worse caricature of what Regina George was,
Yeah,
and at the behest of like the not cool kids who are supposed to be like nice and accepting or whatever.
yeah,
No, they're Frankenstein and they created a monster. Every
they really did.
everybody was at fault there.
Yeah, and it never feels forced,
Hmm.
which is a big thing because it's so easy to feel these character changes forced. Like, you're watching, it's like, nope, I see exactly. It's very easy to follow the through line, right? Uh, the people that how they choose to target the plastics. It makes sense. Like, they're not dumb people doing this, and that's kind of scary. And I mean, I've heard that this can be a little bit more realistic with, again, how bullying happens with girls. It's, yeah, kind of scary actually.
Full targeted and full malicious.
Mhm.
Even when people don't believe it.
Yeah.
It's what made it so nefarious in my head. It was just like, this person isn't this way. You're just saying that, but you're still targeting them as if they're the worst kind of person ever. It
Yeah.
just made me like kind of consider the high school experience of like girls,
Mm.
how terrible like it can be from there. And then you could
It's
also like just pen to that. And then you also include like the actual fact like people growing and they're uncomfortable with themselves and they're like everyone hates their body at that age and they don't know where they sit in these hierarchies.
Yeah.
So like this is very singular facet of what that experience would be.
Mhm.
And when you like bring all those facets together, you're like, oh no, this is Mad Max.
It really is. Me see that when they just start literally tearing at each other
Mhm.
later on. Uh, I do find it interesting that they all seemed friendly afterward, like at the end of the film. Like even though
Mm.
the cliques were destroyed, for lack of a better term, kind of see that there was some growth and that mutual understanding around people as well.
Well, the thing is, I don't think in the end it was a disbanding of the cliques, more, or even like a this group acceptance. More so a people finding somewhere closer that they are belong through the to where they belong through the experience.
Yeah, that makes sense. I think that's better phrasing for where I was trying to go with it.
Yeah, they still haven't made it into heaven. So all they did was honestly like with the junior plastics right at the end
Yeah.
there. That phrasing makes you think that all they've done is like created a bigger clique. We know exactly how to handle them.
I think that's one of those lines where it's literally just for the joke.
Mm.
I don't think that was. Yeah, I don't think there was anything more to that one.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
I think it's more interesting to look at it. It's like, yeah, but the cycle's still going to be there. Like, all you guys are seniors and you're going to be gone, and you're just going to have the new cliques, probably doing the same crappy things,
Oh yeah.
right? And it's, I mean, that's what's going to happen. It's going to be a cycle, and I don't know. I think that's kind of part of the power of the movie too. Like, I think they wrote it in a way that it's can be like it's. They tried to make it so it's not dateable.
Mm.
And so, sure, there's going to be the cycle, but then that just means, we get the next generation seeing this and kind of growing from it. I think
Yeah, for
that's
sure.
a big part of it. Apparently, like, that is actually one of the whole reasons why they're trying to make fetch happen, because she didn't want to have, like, Tina Fey didn't want to have any slang that could actually date it. And of course, well, by trying to make fetch happen, one day it will happen.
Well, what they did is essentially create a slang word that like actually semi caught on.
Mhm.
Ironically, but caught on.
Yeah. But it's still not dateable in the same way, right? As
Exactly.
like groovy or cowabunga might be. I had a hard time writing notes for this one. I don't. The movie just pulls me in.
Well, that's the thing. Like it itself, this isn't a criticism. It's more of an observation. It's not a particularly deep film, because it's quite obvious that what they're trying to show is the overall theme, and they
Mhm.
delivered on it.
Yeah.
There wasn't little through lines and little tidbits that you have to pick up to understand what's going on. Like it wears what it's trying to do on its sleeve.
Yeah.
Uh, and again, not a
Without
crit.
without
Well,
forcing it.
yeah,
Yeah.
Well, like a decent action movie, right?
Mhm.
You know what the theme is? It's hunt down the bad guy because he did something to the kid, or like stole my car and killed my dog, so I'm gonna get that revenge.
Yeah.
I mean, the first John Wick movie was a little bit deeper than that. Not to throw shade at John Wick.
I'll throw shade at the ones after the first one.
Oh yeah, for sure. It's like I don't understand what the whole point of him cutting off his finger was. Like the entire scene didn't even have to exist in that.
Yeah.
It's like,
Yeah.
oh, you cut off your finger to show us loyalty, and then the next scene he's like, no, I choose the other way. What?
Look, the finger was just getting in the way. Okay. Who knows? Maybe you'll find it like the kitty bracelet.
I think you mean Katie Bracelet. See what I did there?
I did. Why gotta be like that?
It was refreshing to see the overall theme is applied to groups that were not the ones that were portrayed as antagonistic. I know we kind of like talked about this already a little bit, but to show the not cool kids and the geeks and the like weird art kids and that sort of thing, they all had their problems. And
Yeah.
all acted very similarly.
Mm.
Uh, but the thing that I liked is I didn't see it as painting a stereotype about girls, more like it trying to showcase an actual reality.
Yeah, I think that's a big thing with it. It's we've talked about this in other films. It's like just make your characters real.
Hmm.
Um, I think it came up a lot when we were talking about The Craft in particular, where it's like, no, you've just made good characters
Yeah.
and built from there, and that's how you have to do it.
Hmm.
Right? Like all of these characters, there's your strong female protagonist. They all have flaws, but they all, in the end kind of grow past the flaws and
Hmm.
just learn to cope in the world. And they it felt, a little bit hyperbolic, but it felt like a high school experience.
Hmm.
And as these are actual people dealing with that.
Well, that's an interesting point that you made because Katie didn't start out as the correct definition of strong female protagonist, which is uh, a strong character. That is someone written with pros and cons and flaws and strengths. When she entered that environment, she really was just a blank canvas to be
Mhm.
impressed upon by like her environment there.
Yeah.
And through those tribulations, you got to see her go from that blank canvas into an actual strong and well formed character
Mhm.
through trials and tribulations and discovering what her place was and what her faults were.
Yeah. And yeah, I mean, yeah, she was different blank slate, but I mean, we knew like the character writing was strong, right? Because there's kind of the different meanings of strong, right?
Yep.
She wasn't a fully fledged character, but as a whole, written well. And I think one of my favorite things, like with Katie's character, is like as she's doing this, like all of a sudden getting love struck.
Hmm.
I don't know. It just interests me so much. It's like, oh yeah, no, I'm going to pretend to be absolutely terrible at math just so I can talk to this boy. I'm like, it's interesting to see that socialization hit her
Mm.
like that, and it's just so interesting. And I also question how they must score grades different in the states. So I'm like, look, if she got all the work and just the answer wrong, she should have got at least 75 because it's 3/4 of your mark is showing the work in math. I don't know why that hit me.
I don't know. I don't know math. I've never done a math a day in my life,
Uh, that makes sense.
except for that time where I was in welding school.
And you had to do a math.
I had to do at least one math.
Just the one.
Just the one. Um, the voyage that we got to take with Katie was her discovering who she was in this environment.
Mhm.
And we got to go along that same ride with her
Yes.
as she was trying to like adapt to the people around her. Like when she was with the art kids, she was trying to adapt to be like them. And that was like mean and cynical and that pointed their maliciousness at the plastics.
Mm.
And then she started adopting to the plastics because it was attention. And in the end, her like finding herself and just like, you know what, actually, this is who I am.
Yeah.
So we got to see more like a fall and a rise rather than a rise and a fall.
Yeah. And I think it's done well because like there's always the core of Katie always seemed to kind of poke through
Mm-hmm.
in these little places, so it never felt odd. In the long run, she didn't really change that much from how she was presented to us in the beginning. Fairly, in that fairly nice and good at maths and good at the math and kind of that little bit of still gonna hang out with the weird art kids or the outcasts because she kind of is. So in the end, she kind of ends up where she started. Oh, sorry. So like the traits that were always kind of that always kind of stick there is like she always kind of kept that little bit of naivety.
Mm-hmm.
The two parties being a good example of that. It's a Halloween party. Of course, I'm going to go all spoopy like because she didn't get the memo about it's when the girls can dress however they want and not have to be judged by it.
Mm-hmm.
To the oh yeah, no, it's just a small party. Like cheese and crackers for 8 people is definitely enough, right?
Yeah.
I liked that always stuck with her
You could even see that point when she got called in the office regarding the burn book, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like, she didn't understand what to do. Like, she was telling the truth, and she thought that that would carry her through.
Yeah.
And it was quite clear that it was being pinned on her, and she couldn't prove otherwise.
Mm-hmm.
So there was some of that naivety. She didn't expect less than straightforwardness. Or sorry, I think she still expected people who were not in her age range to view her how she viewed herself.
Yeah, it's almost a callback to like her first day of school
Mm.
when she's trying to go to the bathroom and she's like, I'm just not used to adults not trusting me.
Well, exactly.
Uh, and I guess like even with the burn books, like yeah, sure, you might even if you're being truthful about it. I mean, one, they're not going to know. Like, you have to go after it, and especially once you see an allegation in there, be very true.
Yeah.
It's like now all of a sudden, like I think they did that pretty well. It's like, yeah, no, the cops now have to go and search Miss Norbury's house because, well, the other allegation was very true. It's interesting to see how a rumor splits, and I completely went off your point. Oh my god, where's my brain? My ESPN is not working.
You can tell when it's already raining 30% of the time.
Yes.
Which is funny. To just go completely in a different direction. I was looking at a few of these characters, such as Lacey and Amanda, and I was just pulling up Rachel McAdams.
Mhm.
It's so weird seeing these people like not in this context now.
Mm.
Thankfully, a lot of the movies that they've been in are a bit older, but it's like if you look at Amanda Seyfried,
Yeah.
I mean, Les Miserables, Letters to Juliet, Dear John, like Mamma
Mamma
Mia, here we
Mia.
go again.
And Mamma Mia, the original. Yeah.
Rachel McAdams. So we have what? The Notebook, Red Eye. Yeah, just so out of nowhere, but I think knowing these characters because they do seem to be iconic to some degree.
Mm.
I'm wondering if that would taint my viewings of these other films.
Well, so I mean, I can say like Amanda Seyfried. I've just seen her in so many other things,
Mhm.
like in that I don't typecast her, but I could see how very easy it would be because again, this is just I don't know. This is one of those movies that definitely hits that rewatch value. um, and yeah, they are kind of iconic, but I think they're also archetypal enough that it doesn't quite typecast in the same way. Um,
Oh, I see what you're saying. I'm not saying that they were typecast. I'm saying that the characters themselves were iconic. It would impress those characters on me
mm,
in a different film, especially one that's unrelated, like
mm.
Lost in Space or The Notebook.
Yeah, I honestly, the one who plays, is it, yeah, with Lacey Chatford, never even connected in my mind that she was Penny in Lost in Space.
Mm.
And like I saw that looking over, I'm like, wait, what? Rachel McAdams and Amanda Seyfried, I think, could fall into that a little bit more. I mean, this was pretty early in their careers too, wasn't it?
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah. I mean, this movie is a lot older than I'd like to admit.
Now you
Because I'm oh man.
get off my lawn. You mentioned earlier that they tried to avoid slang
Hmm.
to prevent dating the film in that way.
Yeah.
And I think that's one of the reasons why I think it held true. This is probably one of the films that aged the best out of all the ones we've watched so far,
Mm.
except maybe Die Hard.
Die Hard's so good.
Because Die Hard will never be bad. Uh, but like I wouldn't say it's timeless.
Mm.
It's not like a seasonal Christmas song that will never die. but there's nothing particularly different about it that would make you go like, oh, this is a product of the 90s or like 2000 or something like that. And I think it'll hold strong through that. So overall, it just held up very well.
Yeah, I agree. Oh, I looked at some of the trivia just because you were talking about like the leads.
Mm-hmm.
There was some interesting choices that were on the line, apparently. So apparently, I think Amanda Seyfried was originally going to be the main.
Okay.
It would be Caddy. And I think Lindsay Lohan was going to be Regina.
Oh, I think I heard about something like this. But I was like in my head, it didn't make sense. Is it because Lindsay Lohan like had a super good girl image at the time?
I think that's definitely part of it because this was her first non-Disney thing. I do think that was part of it, and I think Rachel McAdams was also kind of very one of those. She had that. This is only like 4 or 5 movies in her thing, but she was very much seen as that nice girl, and they're like, no one can be mean like a nice girl. It was part of the reasons why they put her in instead.
And that might have been a little too on the nose, though.
Mm.
Having her easily kind of like transition from like the good girl to the meanest of the mean girls. I think she was probably just the right choice for that.
Yeah, for sure. I think I saw somewhere that ScarJo was in line to be either Regina or Caddy. I can't remember which.
ScarJo? How old is ScarJo?
Still would be around that same time. I mean,
okay, yeah. 18 years ago, she would have been 20.
Yeah, again, like, remember we watched Lost in Translation. It's like, oh no, she actually is just young. And like, that was one of her first films. This would have been right at the beginning of her career, too.
Scarlett Johansson has a baby named Cosmo.
Nerd.
I'm sorry, ScarJo. I do not agree with this nerd saying. I do not bully the women's.
Oh no, not a nerdy girl. Whatever will I do?
You're probably the meanest of the mean. Oh jeez. Oh jeez. Wait, there was a Mean Girls the musical? Nice.
Yeah, that's a bit more recent. I think I've heard a couple songs from it. It's actually pretty good. There's a Heathers the musical as well.
Somehow Heathers the musical makes more sense to me. Which, by the way, I've seen the Heathers.
The musical?
Or not the musical, but just the Heathers.
Yeah, I don't think I have.
Wait, do we know why? Do we know why Janice fell out with Regina George?
They kind of said, yeah. So they I think Regina was dating someone, and Janice couldn't handle that she was seeing someone. So she took the no, but pay attention to me that Janice was doing as, oh, obviously a lesbian. Oh, she started being mean there. I think puberty hit basically, and they kind of went separate ways and did not handle it.
Do you think it was like kind of the same story as Gretchen? But essentially Janice went like actually got out of Regina's cycle. Obviously not the whole like Mean Girl cycle, but out of Janet's. Or sorry, out of Regina's.
I don't know if it's quite the same. I think it's just that reflections happening. Right. It's just like, toxic people can push people away. Whereas I felt that Gretchen kind of leaned into that. Like she was almost codependent with it and craved it more. I kind of get the feeling that they were close friends, and now that she's dating someone and not as present as she used to be, she didn't know how to handle it, and that ended up causing a bigger rift between Regina and her.
Okay,
so that's how I read it. But
yeah, it's just like it's the one unknown there because they kept hinting like that was going to be a reveal, but it didn't end up being one. I was hoping for like a bigger twist where Regina George ends up becoming like a pseudo protagonist, because you start feeling a little bit bad for her, because she's being systematically like destroyed, and then she just turns around and like has the one up evil plan to make sure that you like still hate her for some reason.
It's so I think that's one of like that's very slight twist I would have done. Would have kept everything the same. It's like I just wouldn't have shown that page in the book at all. Leave that slightly up in the air. I think I don't know, like again, watching it this time here is like Regina never she just didn't put me off in the same way that I think they were necessarily going to. Like I never truly saw her as an antagonist or uh I honestly almost see it as her and Caddy just being co-protagonists in a way. Like,
To me, it's like, now that you're kind of explaining it, kind of makes me think of her more like a large object swept up in the tornado that is that environment.
mhm.
So rather than being the force of nature, she's more like the result of it.
Yeah, it's I think that's a good way to say it. It's like this is the environment. She's adapted very well to the environment.
Mm-hmm.
Again, it was just like in my immediate thoughts, I was like, she's not as bad as she comes across. Yeah, bit catty at each other in the background, but I mean, apparently every single girl in that school is.
Mm-hmm.
Right. And the only secret behind it was, no one knew that everyone else was doing it for some reason. So I never really saw her as that villain.
They definitely tried to paint her as one.
Mm-hmm.
But I think a lot of that is just like painting her as a villain in the eyes of everybody around her, when really, like, from the start of the movie, like all anyone was doing was bad mouthing Regina George.
Yeah. I mean, in the long run, like for the majority of the film, I've kind of touched on this already. I mean, Caddy is more of a villain than
Mm-hmm.
anything else. I mean, Regina's just being Regina. Caddy is actively trying to sabotage.
Mm-hmm.
Like it's weird.
It's like a weird dynamic.
Yeah, but
I don't
I
know.
think that's just one of those things that's kind of strengthened the film, though. It's gray, and you don't get that often in a lot of teen movies like this.
Yeah, everything is either black or white, right?
Yeah, or just about an epic party.
series of grays, nothing black and white. I actually don't really have anything else to say about this film.
What I have to say about the film is it is very fetch. I will make it happen. Honestly, it's one of my favorite movies. I've never had an issue going back and rewatching it. Honestly, I think everyone should watch it. It should be on top lists. Great acting, a great cast early in their careers and still just hitting it out of the park. What are your
I definitely would be able to watch this again. Probably not anytime soon. Usually have trouble with that sort of thing, but this movie does give me worry. Like it seemed not for itself, but anything related or sequel or say the musical adaptation.
Hmm.
This sets such a bar for what it is that I really wonder if anything following up would let me down. I mean, there's obvious cases where that doesn't happen, like Alien to Aliens, Interview with the Vampire to Queen of the Damned. But this one, because it is unique and setting a bar in such a way, if I see anything related to this, like directly like a sequel or something, I'm probably just gonna go like, no, you can't hit it. Like, is there a Mean Girls too? Because if there is, I'm not gonna watch it.
There is.
And it's probably terrible.
I couldn't tell you. I know there is a Mean Girls too.
Is Mean Girls 2 as good as the first? Review is great when it starts with, in overall, Mean Girls 2 is not a bad movie.
All right. I know. I can only think of like two other films of this type of genre that have kind of left that bit of an impact for me.